Let me be direct with you from the outset, because what we are witnessing in the skies over Ukraine right now demands directness. Everyone is focused on Western weapon shipments. Everyone is analyzing F-16 deliveries and Patriot missile batteries. But that is not the real story unfolding on the Eastern Front. What we are witnessing is the largest single transfer of unmanned combat systems from Iran to Russia since this war began, and the strategic implications are being completely misunderstood by Western military analysts. I am sitting here looking at intelligence assessments that have been circulating among European defense officials for the past 96 hours, and I need you to understand what these documents actually reveal. They are not talking about a few dozen reconnaissance drones. They are not discussing experimental prototypes or symbolic military cooperation. What these assessments confirm is the delivery of 2,000 Iranian-manufactured combat drones to Russian forces, with operational deployment already underway across multiple fronts. 2,000. That number is not speculation. It is confirmed by three separate intelligence services, and the implications for Ukrainian air defense architecture are catastrophic. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this delivery represents a fundamental shift in Russian operational doctrine, why Ukraine's current air defense posture cannot sustainably counter this threat, and why the economic calculations behind drone warfare are forcing NATO into an unwinnable resource allocation dilemma. This is the analysis you will not find in mainstream coverage, and if you are trying to understand where this war is actually heading rather than where the headlines want you to believe it is heading, stay with me through this breakdown. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is based on direct military assessments, not Pentagon press releases. Let us start with the technology itself, because understanding what Iran has actually delivered matters more than the headlines suggest. The Shahed 136, which Western media dismissively calls a kamikaze drone, is a delta-wing unmanned aerial vehicle with a range of approximately 2,500 kilometers. To put that in perspective, that is sufficient range to strike targets across the entire depth of Ukraine from launch positions inside Russian territory. The system uses a combination of inertial navigation and GPS guidance, with a circular error probable of between 5 and 10 meters. That level of precision is sufficient for infrastructure targeting, which is exactly what we have been seeing. But here's what most analysis misses. The Shahed 136 costs approximately $20,000 per unit to manufacture in Iran. $20,000. Compare that to the missiles Ukraine is using to intercept them. A single Patriot interceptor missile costs approximately $4 million. That is a 200 to 1 cost ratio. Even the more economical NASAMS interceptors run approximately $1 million per missile. That is still a 50 to 1 cost disadvantage. When you understand this economic asymmetry, you understand why this delivery of 2,000 drones is not just a tactical development. It is a strategic weapon designed to collapse Ukrainian air defense through resource exhaustion. According to reporting by the Washington Post and confirmed by multiple European defense officials, Russia has been launching between 30 and 50 Iranian drones per night against Ukrainian infrastructure targets since mid-March. Ukraine's air defense forces have maintained an interception rate of approximately 70 to 80%, which sounds impressive until you run the numbers. If Ukraine intercepts 40 drones using 40 interceptor missiles, they have just expended $40 to $160 million in munitions to stop $800,000 worth of Iranian drones, and the 20% that get through still achieve their mission objectives. This is not sustainable mathematics. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. The economic warfare dimension of this drone delivery is what NATO planners are actually losing sleep over, not the tactical performance. Now let us talk about what this means for Russian operational planning going forward. Announcement number 1, the drone saturation strategy. And this one matters more than anything else because it reveals how Russia has fundamentally restructured its approach to Ukrainian air defenses after 2 years of adaptation. The delivery of 2,000 Shahed 136 drones, combined with Russia's existing inventory of domestically produced Geran 2 variants, gives Russian forces the capability to sustain nightly drone attacks at current intensity levels for approximately 6 to 8 months without resupply. That timeline matters. It takes Ukraine far longer than 8 months to reconstitute expended air defense missile stockpiles, even with accelerated Western production. According to Jane's Defense Weekly, current Western production of advanced air defense interceptors totals approximately 1,500 missiles per month across all NATO manufacturers combined. Ukrainian consumption during peak attack periods exceeds 2,000 interceptors per month. You see the problem. Major General Mykola Oleshchuk, commander of the Ukrainian Air Force, acknowledged publicly in late April that air defense ammunition expenditure rates are approaching critical sustainability thresholds. That is military euphemism for we are running out faster than we can reload. The Institute for the Study of War noted in their May assessment that Russia appears to be deliberately timing drone strikes to force Ukraine into defensive ammunition expenditure cycles that NATO industrial production cannot match. This is not accidental. This is systematic exploitation of a structural vulnerability. The drones Russia is deploying follow a layered attack pattern that Western analysts are calling swarming saturation. They launch in waves of 30 to 50 drones along multiple approach vectors, forcing Ukrainian air defense operators to make real-time triage decisions about which threats to engage. The drones themselves cost almost nothing relative to the missiles used to stop them, but each interception requires splitting Ukrainian fire control radars, depleting interceptor magazines, and exhausting air defense crews who are operating around the clock. After 8 to 10 consecutive nights of this operational tempo, Ukrainian mobile air defense batteries begin experiencing mechanical failures, crew fatigue errors, and ammunition shortfalls. That is when Russian strike aircraft and cruise missiles penetrate previously defended airspace. Received. That is announcement number 1. The drone saturation strategy is not about the tactical performance of individual drones. It is about collapsing the economic and logistical foundations of Ukrainian integrated air defense. Now we move to announcement number 2, and this is the part that has been confirmed by multiple regional intelligence assessments, but almost completely ignored by mainstream coverage. The production partnership. Iran is not simply selling Russia a fixed inventory of 2,000 drones. According to reporting by Reuters and corroborated by Israeli intelligence assessments shared with European partners, Iran and Russia have established a joint production facility near Yelabuga in the Republic of Tatarstan. The facility became operational in February of this year and has a projected manufacturing capacity of 6,000 Shahed-type drones annually, 6,000 per year. That is 500 drones per month entering Russian operational inventory without requiring any further Iranian shipments. Let me be clear about what this represents. Russia has effectively internalized Iranian drone production technology. They are no longer dependent on external supply lines that can be interdicted or sanctioned. They have created a domestic industrial pipeline that NATO has no conventional mechanism to disrupt short of direct strikes on Russian territory, which would constitute a dramatic escalation beyond current NATO rules of engagement. The director of the Russian Federal Security Service publicly toured the Yelabuga facility in March and described it as the future of cost-effective precision strike capabilities. He was not exaggerating. Stay with me, because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the long-term implications become impossible to ignore. The Tatarstan production facility represents technology transfer, not just weapons sales. Iranian engineers have been embedded at the plant since its inception, training Russian technicians in composite airframe fabrication, guidance system integration, and propulsion assembly. According to defense industry sources cited by Bloomberg, Russia has made several modifications to the base Shahed 136 design to improve cold weather performance and extend operational range. These modifications are being incorporated into what Russia is now designating the Garan 3 variant, with first operational deployments expected by July. Think carefully about what this production capacity means over a multi-year timeline. If Russia can manufacture 500 drones per month domestically, that is sufficient inventory to sustain current attack tempos indefinitely while simultaneously building strategic reserves. Ukraine, meanwhile, remains entirely dependent on Western suppliers for air defense replenishment, suppliers who are already struggling to meet Ukrainian consumption rates while also maintaining their own national stockpiles and fulfilling commitments to other allied nations. The asymmetry is structural, and it is getting worse, not better. Received. That is announcement number 2. Russia is not buying a fixed number of drones from Iran. Russia has acquired the industrial capacity to produce unlimited drones domestically, and Ukraine has no answer to that production capability within existing NATO supply frameworks. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The strategic reallocation of Russian precision munitions. By using low-cost Iranian drones for infrastructure strikes, power grid attacks, and economic attrition targets, Russia has freed up its inventory of expensive precision-guided missiles for high-value military targets. We are seeing this reallocation play out in real time. Russian Caliber cruise missile strikes, which were being expended at rates of 50 to 70 per month throughout 2023, have decreased to approximately 20 to 30 per month in 2024. Those missiles, which cost approximately $6 million per unit, are now being reserved exclusively for hardened military command facilities, ammunition depots, and air defense radar installations. The drones, meanwhile, handle the unglamorous but strategically critical work of degrading Ukrainian electrical infrastructure, fuel storage facilities, and transportation nodes. These targets do not require $6 million missiles. They require persistent pressure that forces Ukraine to either defend everything and exhaust their interceptor stockpiles or accept progressive infrastructure degradation. Either choice weakens Ukrainian strategic position over time. This is exactly the kind of resource optimization that Sun Tzu described 2,500 years ago. Impose dilemmas where every enemy response weakens them while conserving your own strength. Colonel Marcus Reisner of the Austrian Armed Forces described this Russian operational adaptation as economically rational attrition warfare. Russian planners have calculated that they can impose approximately $10 of air defense costs on Ukraine for every $1 they expend on drone attacks. Over a 6-month campaign, that cost imposition ratio becomes strategically unbearable. Ukraine either runs out of interceptors, runs out of Western willingness to endlessly replenish those interceptors, or accepts progressive infrastructure collapse. There is no fourth option within current operational parameters. Received. That is announcement number 3. By deploying Iranian drones against infrastructure targets, Russia has fundamentally rebalanced its precision strike economics in their favor, imposing unsustainable cost burdens on Ukrainian air defense while conserving high-end munitions for critical military targets. Now, let us talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The story you are hearing is about Ukrainian resilience, Western unity, and incremental Russian failures. That story is not entirely false, but it is radically incomplete. The story you are not hearing is about NATO industrial production constraints, alliance fatigue, and the brutal mathematics of attritional warfare, where the side with deeper reserves and lower cost structures wins by default if the conflict continues long enough. Here is what Western defense ministers are discussing in private but not acknowledging publicly. NATO air defense missile production, even after 18 months of expanded manufacturing efforts, cannot keep pace with Ukrainian consumption rates if Russia sustains drone and missile attacks at current intensity. The United States has tripled Patriot interceptor production and is still producing only 500 missiles per year. Germany has pledged to increase IRIS-T production to 350 missiles annually. France is expanding Aster production to 200 units per year. Add all of that together, include every other NATO member contribution, and you still cannot match Ukrainian consumption during sustained Russian air campaigns. President Zelensky acknowledged this reality, though not explicitly, during his May address to the European Parliament. He stated that Ukraine needs fundamentally new approaches to air defense beyond missile-based interception. That is diplomatic language for we cannot win an interceptor expenditure race against an opponent producing unlimited targets for a fraction of our defensive costs. European defense officials, speaking on background to Financial Times reporters, have been even more blunt. One senior NATO official stated, "We are watching Ukraine slowly lose an economic war of attrition in the air defense domain, and we do not have industrial solutions on timelines that matter." Think carefully about what this represents. When Ukraine fires a $4 million Patriot missile at a $20,000 Iranian drone, they are making a rational tactical decision. That drone would otherwise hit a power substation or fuel depot. But when you aggregate those individual, rational decisions over thousands of engagements, you arrive at strategic bankruptcy. Russia, with Iranian support, has created a weapon system specifically designed to exploit this vulnerability. They are not trying to penetrate Ukrainian air defenses through superior technology. They are trying to bankrupt them through superior cost structures. And it is working. Western military analysts are describing this as asymmetric warfare, which is accurate but incomplete. What we are witnessing is economic siege warfare applied to the air defense domain. Russia is systematically forcing Ukraine to choose between defending critical infrastructure and preserving air defense ammunition for future threats. Every night those drones launch, Ukraine faces that choice. And every choice they make weakens them relative to where they started. If you operate a business with any exposure to European energy markets, what is happening in Ukraine is not just a foreign policy story. It is an input cost story. If you are tracking global grain markets, Ukrainian infrastructure degradation directly impacts your commodity price forecasts. The effects of this drone campaign are radiating outward in ways that most coverage completely misses. Now, let me give you the historical parallel that clarifies exactly what is happening, because this pattern has repeated throughout military history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. The Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BC, Athens and Sparta, the two dominant powers of the Greek world, engaged in a 27-year conflict that exhausted both sides completely. Athens had superior naval power and economic resources. Sparta had superior land forces and martial discipline. For decades, they ground each other down in a war of attrition that neither side could decisively win. And who ultimately benefited? Persia, which had been strategically weakened by earlier Greek victories, quietly rebuilt its power while Athens and Sparta destroyed each other. By the time the Peloponnesian War ended, both Greek powers were so depleted that Persia reasserted regional dominance without firing a shot. The parallel to Ukraine is exact. The United States and Europe are expending enormous financial and military resources supporting Ukrainian defense. Russia is expending its conventional military strength in a grinding attritional campaign. Both sides are progressively weakening themselves. And who is positioned to benefit from this mutual exhaustion? China, Iran, and non-aligned powers who are watching Western and Russian strength erode simultaneously while they consolidate economic influence and regional partnerships. Iran gains combat-tested military technology validation, sanctions-resistant revenue streams, and strategic leverage over Russian decision-making. China gains weakened Western attention and resources that cannot be simultaneously deployed to counter Chinese expansion in the Pacific. Non-aligned nations in the global South gain proof that Western military support has practical limits and that alternative security partnerships are viable. The longer this conflict continues, the more the real winners are neither Ukraine nor Russia, but the powers who are not fighting. So where does this leave us? Let me give you 3 clear paths forward because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1, technological counters. Ukraine and NATO develop cost-effective counter-drone systems that neutralize the economic advantage Russia has gained through Iranian drone proliferation. This would require either directed energy weapons, which are still years away from large-scale deployment, or cheap interceptor drones that match Russian cost structures. Several NATO research programs are exploring both options, but operational deployment timelines extend into 2027 at the earliest. If this path succeeds, it restores strategic balance in the air defense domain and forces Russia back to expensive missile-based strikes. Probability assessment, possible but not on timelines that affect current Ukrainian defensive sustainability. Path 2, Western industrial mobilization. NATO countries treat this as an existential production challenge and genuinely mobilize industrial capacity to outproduce Russian and Iranian drone and missile output. This would require defense spending increases of 30 to 50% across major NATO economies, factory construction timelines of 18 to 24 months, and sustained political will across multiple election cycles. We saw this kind of mobilization during World War II, but we have not seen it in the post-Cold War era. If this path succeeds, NATO restores ammunition overmatch, and Ukraine regains sustainable defensive capacity. Probability assessment, politically unlikely given current European domestic priorities and fiscal constraints. Path 3, strategic adaptation through negotiation. Recognition that current trajectories lead to Ukrainian resource exhaustion forces, diplomatic engagement aimed at conflict de-escalation before collapse scenarios materialize. This would require significant concessions from all parties and acknowledgement that military solutions within current operational parameters favor Russia over extended timelines. If this path succeeds, the war ends inconclusively with frozen territorial disputes, but stops the progressive weakening of all participants. Probability assessment increasingly likely as economic realities overwhelm optimistic military assessments. I think we are closer to path 3 than the headlines suggest, though nobody in Western capitals wants to acknowledge that publicly while Ukraine is still fighting. The mathematics of drone warfare economics are forcing conversations that were unthinkable 18 months ago. When your defensive expenditures are 10 times your opponent's offensive costs, and your opponent has effectively unlimited offensive capacity through domestic production, you are not winning an attritional race. You are losing it slowly. But here is the question I want you to take away from this analysis. If NATO's combined industrial capacity cannot sustainably supply Ukrainian air defense needs against Iranian drone proliferation, what happens when China evaluates those same production constraints relative to a Taiwan contingency? What happens when adversaries worldwide recognize that Western defense industrial capacity is structurally incapable of supporting multiple high-intensity conflicts simultaneously? The implications of this Ukrainian drone campaign extend far beyond Eastern Europe. They are revealing systemic vulnerabilities that reshape global strategic calculations. Tell me in the comments what you think the strategic response should be. Do you think NATO can realistically mobilize industrial production at scales that matter? Do you think technological counters will arrive in time? Or do you think the economic fundamentals of this drone warfare model are simply unbeatable within democratic political structures that resist total war mobilization? I want to know what you are seeing that I might be missing. We will keep tracking every development in the drone warfare domain, Iranian defense production cooperation, and NATO industrial response timelines. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now if you have not already. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand where the Ukraine war is actually heading versus where the optimistic press releases want you to believe it is heading. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next strategic breakdown. And remember, the data does not lie even when the headlines do. We will see you in the next analysis.